High Velocity Bulletin, this is your May 24th Rapid Revision Explainer. We're skipping the pleasantries and moving at maximum pace today, so buckle in. Let's hit the grid.
Section 1. Economy and Infrastructure. First headline: Petrol, diesel, and CNG hikes triggered by the West Asia shock. The core news here is that prices are surging across India due to global crude pressure and majorly disrupted energy supplies. Two key analysis points for your notes. First, this brutally exposes our heavy import dependence. Second, it proves the absolute urgent need to diversify our suppliers and aggressively expand our strategic petroleum reserve. Next.
If you're ready to really practice all 8 mains questions from today's news, and you want to get your hands on Prelims MCQs and detailed notes, go ahead and download the complete PDF. Just scan the QR code on your screen or use the link in the description to join our Telegram channel.
Grid resilience under heat stress. The core situation? Peak energy demand is triggering severe power cuts, exposing massive grid vulnerabilities despite national claims of a zero deficit. Breaking this down, your 2 analysis points are: the real challenge lies in local distribution bottlenecks, and the fact that a macro-level surplus simply does not guarantee last-mile reliability for locals facing power outages. Moving on.
Kerala's Silver Line project is shelved. The core development is the complete halting of the semi-high-speed K-Rail infrastructure project amid massive protests over a total lack of community consent. Your 2 analytical takeaways. First, it showcases the massive ecological damage and risks in fragile zones. And second, it highlights severe administrative capacity constraints when executing mega infrastructure without triggering institutional friction.
Section 2. Environment and Public Health.
Delhi's severe heat alert. The IMD has issued orange and yellow alerts as temperatures push past 45 degrees, drastically impacting urban populations. For your analysis, the root cause here is the urban heat island effect, driven by vast concrete and low vegetation. Your second point is the way forward. We need strict protection protocols for vulnerable outdoor workers and immediate ward-level cooling shelters.
Yamuna pollution and decentralized STPs. The core news is that urban water governance remains in a deep crisis, despite massive ongoing infrastructure projects. Your 2 analysis points. First, STP construction alone doesn't guarantee pollution reduction. Second, the necessary path forward requires actually intercepting sewage directly at the local level to bypass institutional friction. Next up.
The World Health Assembly's stroke resolution. The WHO just passed a major resolution prioritizing non-communicable diseases, specifically global stroke care preparedness. Why? The fundamental cause is a massive global policy gap. To fix this, your way forward emphasizes transparent rules, strict monitoring, and heavy stakeholder consultation to actually improve readiness.
The drying Naulias of Uttarakhand. The core news here is that traditional Himalayan spring systems are rapidly vanishing under severe climate stress and changing land use. Link this directly to your 2 analysis points. The cause is severely damaged recharge zones where rapid runoff replaces steady percolation. And the impact? Severe, life-threatening water scarcity for local mountain communities.
The Ayushman Bharat rollout in West Bengal. Cooperative federalism is currently being tested as ideological friction stalls critical health welfare schemes in the state. 2 takeaways for your analysis. The core challenge highlights how federal constraints override vital welfare delivery. The solution, or the way forward, demands a clear mandate and highly functional citizen grievance redress mechanisms.
Section 3. Governance and Society. Let's keep the pace. Street vending in Sarojini Nagar. Judicial oversight has stepped in to mediate a heavy clash between vendor livelihoods and municipal urban planning. The analytical impact here? First, eviction without proper surveys directly violates the Street Vendors Act. Second, it's a massive continuous challenge balancing pedestrian needs, municipal safety, and trader survival. Noida SEZ workers and minimum wage. Industrial workers in special economic zones are actively striking for humane hours and minimum wage adherence in global cities. Your primary analytical challenge: SEZ-led growth often dangerously relies on suppressed labor standards. The fix must mandate ILO fair wages and comprehensive safety standards. The FCRA amendment debate. Restrictions on civil society funding, like the scrutiny over the missionaries of charity, have triggered a massive NGO regulation debate. The overarching governance challenge is preventing the misuse of foreign funds without suffocating legitimate humanitarian work. The immediate impact is a sharp decline in vital welfare service delivery. AI agents and on-screen marking. The CBSA's shift to automated marking and research agents is raising serious algorithmic accountability concerns. Your two takeaways. First, automation is not automatically objective. It absolutely inherits human data bias. Second, the way forward strictly requires human oversight and rigorous, continuous bias checks.
Section 4. Polity and International Relations.
India, the US, and the Quad's Indo-Pacific policy. Policy renewal is accelerating through deepened Quad engagements to balance regional security dynamics. Strategically, your two analysis points. Recognize that the Quad is not a hard nuclear alliance like AUKUS. Because of this, the impact is that India successfully maintains its strategic autonomy while collaborating on broader frameworks.
The Kerala CEO appointment controversy. Serious questions over electoral neutrality and conflicts of interest have erupted following high-level civil service appointments. The fundamental analytical challenge is that strict legality alone does not satisfy democratic accountability. The broader impact is a dangerous erosion of perceived institutional legitimacy and public trust.
India-Nordic ties. Middle powers are collaborating on renewable energy and trade, navigating right around large geopolitical fault lines. The obvious challenge is navigating stark disagreements over Russia. Yet, the way forward proves that these major geopolitical differences do not have to block highly productive bilateral trade cooperation.
UAPA bail jurisprudence. The stringent bail bars within the UAPA are increasingly clashing with Article 21 rights to life and a speedy trial. From this, extract two analysis points. The severe impact is a chilling effect generated by slow trials and prolonged under-trial incarceration. The necessary balance? We critically need to pair national security with fundamental rights safeguards.
Final section, Mains practice and conclusion.
Mains question 1 asks why urban heat wave responses must move beyond advisories to last-mile delivery, discussing suitable governance measures. Here's your exact structure. For the intro, frame heat waves as slow-onset disasters testing last-mile delivery. In your body, detail the climate stress, infrastructure gaps, and health risks. For your balance, emphasize that weather alerts aren't enough. Execution is survival. In your way forward, demand ward-level cooling points, strict work-rest rules, and heat-resilient housing. Next,
Mains question 2 looks at health federalism, asking why the Ayushman Bharat rollout in West Bengal is relevant for the social justice syllabus and to discuss governance challenges and reform options. Structure it like this. Use the West Bengal friction as a trigger for the broader health federalism debate in your intro. In the body, outline the policy gaps, institutional friction, and administrative capacity constraints. Balance this by weighing ideal reforms against actual federal constraints. Conclude by arguing for clear responsibility, measurable indicators, and independent review mechanisms.
we close this explainer with this thought. A constitutional democracy is tested not by slogans, but by the everyday reliability of its institutions. Rights need institutions as much as ideals. Let the gravity of that apply to every topic we hit today. As you continue your rapid revision, keep pushing.
All right, let's get right into it. Headline Bulletin for May 25th, 2026 begins right now.
Section 1. International Relations and Security.
First up, India-US talks on maritime trade. The core news here is that discussions are zeroing in on unimpeded maritime trade, the Strait of Hormuz, and our strategic partnership. For the analysis, two key takeaways. First, freedom of navigation is deeply grounded in customary international law and UNCOLS principles. Second, strategic autonomy is preserved by managing these partnerships issue by issue completely independently. Next headline, the Quad remains vital. The core update is Japan's foreign minister affirming the Quad's relevance, putting a major spotlight on critical minerals and green energy. Analytically speaking, this framework tackles supply chain resilience and economic security head-on, plus it acts as a crucial balancing mechanism against great power politics in the Indo-Pacific order.
Moving to regional security, we have a train bombing in Balochistan. The core news details how insurgency attacks are actively impacting the China-Pakistan economic corridor and overall regional stability. Analyzing this, it really highlights the severe ongoing challenges of terrorism and regional instability. It also directly affects geopolitical infrastructure investments and neighborhood security. Over in West Asia, the headline is the Gaza strike and blockade. The core news, an Israeli strike in Gaza has occurred despite a ceasefire, while the U.S. maintains its Iran blockade. The analysis, this escalation hits global energy security, drives up imported inflation, and disrupts maritime trade routes. The way forward here involves diversifying suppliers, expanding strategic petroleum reserves, and accelerating the push for renewables.
Section 2. Polity and Governance.
Kicking off our polity headlines, debates are escalating over exempting scheduled tribes from the Uniform Civil Code. This core news really tests our legal frameworks. On the analytical side, this is all about balancing uniform family law reform against constitutional identity protection. It also tests the absolute limits of institutional accountability and stakeholder equity. On the governance front, let's look at Ladakh. The core news is the region demanding 6 schedule safeguards over their existing Article 371 protections. Analyzing this demand, it first highlights the friction in federalism and the inevitable governance trade-offs. Second, it underscores the intense tension between administrative capacity and rights safeguards.
Next up, sedition after the BNS. The core news is the repeal of IPC Section 124A, but BNS Section 152 is sustaining those massive constitutional free speech debates. The analysis reveals 2 major concerns. First, the parameters around coerced consent and judicial review, and second, the severe impact on fundamental rights and the actual conditions for securing bail. Turning to our democracy headlines, voter deletion controversies are exposing serious gaps in ECI accountability and voter awareness. Analytically, point 1 is clear: a DAR or documentation error should never automatically trigger a voter deletion. Point 2, highly inclusive electoral rolls are literally an absolute prerequisite for a free and fair election.
Our next headline tackles the Karnataka faith marker rollback. The state's core move is revoking its 2022 Uniform Order, which now allows for limited hijab and faith symbols in classrooms. Why did this happen? The analysis points to policy gaps, institutional friction, and a rapidly changing socioeconomic context. The impact of this results in significant governance stress, major equity concerns, and a drop in public trust. Shifting gears to Bengal poll myths, our core news shows that analyzing voter shifts requires us to move way beyond single-issue identity politics and look closer at anti-incumbency and party systems. This analysis evaluates disenfranchisement, legitimacy crises, and real litigation risks. Plus, it shows how institutional opacity and role revision just deepens political distrust.
Wrapping up polity, our headline is Punjab Law and Order. The core news focuses on heavy opposition criticism after an ASI is killed and the Kapurthala jail experiences violent clashes. The analysis here is twofold. First, while police is a state subject, criminal law and procedure remain firmly in the concurrent list. Second, this entire situation highlights absolutely critical gaps in prison administration, severe overcrowding, and a lack of staff training.
Section 3. Economy and Infrastructure.
In economic news, China is pushing its geoeconomic advantage at the Hainan Free Trade Port. The core news is their aggressive push for regional trade facilitation. Analytically, this fundamentally alters regional economic arrangements and international trade flows. It also cranks up the pressure on global supply chain resilience and infrastructure competitiveness. Moving over to energy, our headline opinion piece takes a hard look at security. The core update is that utilizing discounted Russian oil acts purely as a tactical buffer during market disruptions. It's not a permanent long-term strategy. Analysis shows our vulnerabilities stem from import dependence, risks in West Asia, and sky-high freight costs. The impact translates directly to imported inflation, fiscal stress, and serious pressure on the current account deficit. Our next headline zeroes in on RC transfer gaps. The core news here is that failures in vehicle registration certificate transfers are seriously compromising road safety and accountability. From an analytical perspective, this poses direct, tangible challenges to internal security and liability tracing. Second, it reflects some severe shortfalls in implementation capacity and overall data quality. Also in development news, we have the Bihar investment push. The state is amending its Industrial Investment Promotion Package 2025 to prioritize MSMEs and greenfield townships. The governance challenges here stem from coordination issues, data quality, and the broader political economy. The way forward definitely requires transparent rules, active stakeholder consultation, and solid grievance redress mechanisms. Section 4. Environment, Science, and Health. Starting with the Delhi Mission Yamuna headline, the core news is a massive 1,000 crore rupee approval for sewage treatment and water management projects. Analytically, this tackles chronic urbanization strains, water security, and the integration of traditional knowledge. But keep in mind, constructing sewage treatment plants alone is simply insufficient without simultaneous sewer line revaps. Regarding extreme weather, our next headline covers heat shelters near hospitals. The core news: these extreme temperatures are exposing critical gaps when it comes to protecting the urban homeless near medical facilities. Point 1, this directly tests state capacity in primary care health federalism. Point 2, it frankly exposes major failures in welfare delivery targeted at vulnerable groups. In disaster news, the Karnataka estuary tragedy is our main headline. The core news highlights the severe risks from tides combined with a concerning lack of community awareness. Analytically, we have to realize that disaster management must include small, local livelihood hazards, not just massive earthquakes. And crucially, local institutions remain the absolute center of community resilience. In related ecological news, our headline on human-animal conflict points out that tiger and elephant deaths in altered landscapes really highlight the dangers of infrastructure encroachment. This is primarily driven by habitat fragmentation, the loss of corridors, and climate stress, fundamentally altering these landscapes. Mitigation absolutely mandates early warning systems, much safer infrastructure design, and rapid response teams.
Shifting over to health, our headline covers infertility care. The core news reveals that debates over falling fertility rates are masking the structural inequality in accessing assisted reproductive technology. Analytically, a declining total fertility rate does not suddenly render infertility care irrelevant. It necessitates a rights-based health system that actively addresses this unequal access. On the global health front, an Ebola advisory makes the headlines as a global health emergency triggers strict border screening protocols for all travelers. First, remember that Ebola transmits through direct contact with infected fluids. It's not an airborne vector. Second, this outbreak demands robust public health surveillance and serious border screening infrastructure.
Our final science headline focuses on Earth's outer core reversal. The core news? Researchers have successfully mapped 27 years of iron movement, identifying a definitive 2010 shift from a westward to an eastward flow. Analytically, the causes behind this discovery reflect our rapid scientific mapping capabilities, automation, and some very advanced space ambitions. The way forward here demands responsible innovation, auditability, and highly precise science communication without any exaggeration.
Section 5. Mains Practice and Conclusion. All right, here are 2 high-yield mains questions along with their precise structural frameworks. Let's break them down. Question 1. How should India manage strategic autonomy when West Asia conflict affects energy, diaspora, and India-US ties? Here is how you structure your answer. Open with an introduction focusing on the West Asia instability trigger. In the body, you'll want to focus on energy risk, diaspora safety, and trade. Balance the argument by discussing how to manage autonomy versus alliance pressure. For the way forward, suggest diversifying suppliers and expanding the SPR. Finally, conclude by affirming that sovereign choices dictate policy. Question 2. Why is the Connecticut faith marker rollback relevant for the GS syllabus? Discuss governance challenges and reform options. Your answer structure should look like this. Begin with an introduction on the current trigger for the broader GS issue. In the body, directly address policy gaps, institutional friction, and equity concerns. Balance the ideal reform against rights safeguards. For the way forward, be sure to propose measurable indicators and an independent review. Conclude your answer with a strong focus on accountable implementation and grievance redress.
We're going to conclude this explainer with a foundational thought for you to ponder. As you synthesize today's data, science answers should explain cause, evidence, scale, and limitation without exaggeration. Keep that principle in mind. That's the end of our bulletin.
The Relentless Bulletin May 26 analysis. Let's dive straight into the headlines.
Section 1. Governance and Institutional Integrity. Supreme Court blames NTA for repeated NEET leaks. The Supreme Court has officially blamed the National Testing Agency for repeated NEET UG question paper leaks, issuing strict notices to the Union Education Ministry regarding a complete institutional restructuring. What does this mean for us? First, there's an immediate need for parliamentary accountability and a much stronger examination governance architecture. Second, these high-stakes entrance exams directly affect the equality of opportunity guaranteed to everyone under Articles 14 and 15.
Derrick's selection dispute. Ongoing disputes over the selection process for the Delhi Electricity Regulatory Commission are really highlighting the federal tensions in electricity infrastructure governance. The takeaway here is that a regulator absolutely requires independence and domain expertise. It's entirely distinct from an ordinary administrative department. That institutional autonomy is core to free and fair governance and maintaining public trust.
Court records fire in Gurugram. Hearings for 21 different courts in Gurugram had to be forcibly shifted after a fire severely damaged the record room, exposing exceptionally weak disaster preparedness in our judicial infrastructure. This clearly demonstrates the acute risks of paper-based records to the continuity of justice. Moving forward, digitization through e-courts has to include fire safety, digital backups, and mandatory disaster recovery drills.
Section 2. Economic and Resource Policies.
Fuel price hikes. Petrol and diesel prices rose yet again across the country, driven by global oil volatility and geopolitical supply chain disruptions in West Asia and Russia. The impact? It aggressively drives imported inflation, fiscal stress, and current account deficit pressure. The only viable way forward is to diversify our suppliers, expand strategic petroleum reserves, and seriously accelerate EV adoption.
Finance Commission devolution. Ongoing debates surrounding the Finance Commission are focusing heavily right now on the balance of resource distribution formulas among our states. The main challenges lie in balancing equity for developing states with efficiency rewards. Solving this requires directly addressing the demographic and fiscal concerns raised by southern states regarding fair devolution.
The falling rupee. The Indian rupee continues to face severe downward pressure due to a widening trade deficit and persistent capital outflows. While RBI intervention can definitely smooth out currency volatility, it simply cannot permanently fix exchange rates against market fundamentals. Ultimately, this exacerbates our imported inflation vulnerabilities and external sector instability.
Section 3. Environment, Disasters, Urban Action. Mobile Heat Relief Units. The Delhi government just deployed mobile heat relief units to provide cooling zones and water to protect outdoor workers amid severe heatwave alerts. The causes here are climate stress compounded by weak urban planning and massive infrastructure gaps. Our way forward has to be a rapid shift to climate-resilient planning, decentralized systems, and nature-based solutions.
Himalayan mining scrutiny. Mining operations in the Himalayas are facing intense scrutiny through expert committees regarding ecological fragility and safety standards. The core analysis here is that the legitimacy of these expert committees relies heavily on their composition, transparency, and rigorous scientific reasoning. It's all about balancing resource extraction with disaster management in highly vulnerable ecological zones. Peri-urban water governance. Unreliable water supply and contaminated groundwater in peri-urban zones aggressively expose the missing middle of India's rapid urbanization. The reality is that peri-urban residents frequently pay urban prices without receiving adequate water and sanitation services. Fixing this requires empowered local governance, source security, and decentralized wastewater treatment.
Illegal gold mining landslide in Angola. At least 28 people died in Angolan landslide, highlighting the extreme dangers of unregulated artisanal gold mining. Artisanal mining informality translates directly to unsafe, unregulated extraction and severe human security risks. This demonstrates a profound failure of resource governance globally, rather than merely localized lawlessness.
Section 4. Demographics, Society, and Law. SRS 2024 and Aging India. The 2024 sample registration system data shows India's total fertility rate dropping to 1.9, officially falling below the replacement level of 2.1. This signals a definitive shift from a demographic dividend to a demographic transition and an aging population. It absolutely requires urgent policy planning for pensions, geriatric healthcare, and managing regional fertility disparities.
Andhra Pradesh pronatalist policy. In a direct response to these demographic shifts, Andhra Pradesh has introduced pronatalist policies to incentivize higher fertility rates. This highlights the complex intersection of fertility incentives and women's labor force participation. It also heavily reflects state-level anxieties regarding shrinking workforces and future delimitation challenges.
Assam Uniform Civil Code Bill. Assam's introduction of a Uniform Civil Code Bill has immediately triggered intense constitutional debates around equality, pluralism, and family law. Now, while a UCC is a directive principle goal, its implementation must still satisfy fundamental rights. This necessitates a very delicate balance between constitutional morality and protecting cultural pluralism. AIA-DMK resignations and anti-defection. Resignations within the AIA-DMK bring sharp focus to the legal and constitutional ambiguities between voluntary resignation and disqualification under the 10th schedule. The causes? Party switching, delayed speaker decisions, and partisan incentives. The impact is severe. It weakens electoral mandates, destabilizes governments, and significantly reduces voter trust.
Final section, Mains Practice and Conclusion. Let's look at the frameworks.
For question 13 on illegal mining disasters revealing resource governance failure, structure your answer like this. Introduce the ecological risk. Detail the body with climate and infrastructure stress. And conclude that extraction must be legally and ecologically bounded.
For question 14 on digitization strengthening court accountability, balance digital speed with privacy in your body paragraphs. Suggest exact safeguards like routine backups and fire safety, and conclude that digitization protects justice continuity through redundancy.
As you synthesize today's governance, ecological, and economic data from this explainer, carry forward this foundational essay theme into your studies: resilience in an age of shocks. As our demographics shift and our climate drastically changes, the real question is, are our current institutions resilient enough to survive the next decade?
UPSContext Rapid Fire Bulletin. Current Events and Daily News Analysis.
Section 1. International Relations and Trade.
Headline: India-US Rare Earth Steel. The core news: India and the U.S. have agreed on rare earth elements and critical mineral cooperation to plug Quad's supply chain gaps. 2 points of analysis here. First, critical minerals like lithium and cobalt are absolutely vital for clean energy and defense. Second, China's dominance in processing makes supply chain diversification strategically crucial.
Headline: Quad Foreign Ministers Meeting and Indo-Pacific Priorities. The core news is that the Quad cooperation framework is focusing on issue-based minilateralism rather than a NATO-style military alliance. For our analysis, 1. The grouping of India, the US, Japan, and Australia ensures vital supply chain resilience. 2. This cooperation continues to push forward despite bilateral trade or visa tensions.
Headline: West Asia Conflict and India-US Strategic Autonomy. Core news: U.S. diplomatic visits aim to smooth over tariff and visa tensions while navigating India's complex energy calculus amidst West Asia conflicts. Analyzing this. First, U.S. actions regarding China and Pakistan remain key bilateral irritants. Second, strong convergence in one domain doesn't eliminate hard disputes in trade or visas.
Headline: India-Canada Trade Deal. Core news here: economic diplomacy efforts are continuing in the wake of recent diplomatic tensions between the two nations. The analysis: keep in mind that a trade negotiation is entirely distinct from a signed free trade agreement. Final implementation still requires finalized text, ratification, and domestic safeguards.
Headline: Iran, Lebanon, and Gaza spillover. Core news: Israeli strikes in Lebanon and Iranian warnings are highlighting escalation risks that deeply impact global oil markets and Indian strategic choices. The analysis: first, these conflict spillovers combine humanitarian, energy, and maritime security risks. Second, India's multi-vector policy cannot be reduced to a single pro- or anti-country stance.
Headline: China-Pakistan alignment. The news: recent joint statements and alignment continue to raise serious concerns over sovereignty, regional security, and the One China policy. Our analysis: 1. This alignment acts as a heavy structural constraint on India's continental security. 2. It directly shapes narratives and implications for POCE and our border readiness.
Section 2. Polity and Social Justice. Headline: Assam UCC and Personal Law Reform. Core news: state-level experiments with Article 44 continue right now amidst complex plural traditions and rights claims. Breaking this down: first, while reforms advance equality, they can create minority insecurity without proper safeguards. Second, remember that uniformity is not automatically equality.
Headline: Onion farmers MSP protests. The core news is that Nashik farmers are protesting, demanding a 24 rupee per kg minimum support price, reflecting immense frustration over low farm gate prices. The analysis: 1. Assured procurement is inherently limited for perishables requiring storage. 2. Any price stabilization must carefully balance farmer income with consumer inflation.
Headline: Madhu lynching case. Core news: this case highlights critical issues of tribal dignity, witness protection, and the overall integrity of the criminal justice system. Analyzing the impact: first, mob violence against vulnerable groups is a severe constitutional violation, not just a law and order issue. Second, the witness protection scheme of 2018 is absolutely essential for fair trials and reliable testimony.
Headline: Anti-defection and AIA-DMK resignations. Core news: the Speaker's acceptance of MLA resignations while disqualification petitions were pending has sparked major constitutional scrutiny. The analysis: the core issue is whether a resignation makes anti-defection petitions infructuous. Plus, a resignation accepted by the Speaker might still be litigated to prevent an MLA from bypassing disqualification.
Section 3. Environment and Urban Mobility.
Headline: Fuel shortage and panic buying. The news:
Supply chain trust in energy markets is being tested right now amid localized fuel shortages and panic buying. The analysis? 1. Queues at retail pumps usually reflect panic demand or logistics, not an actual national stock deficit. 2. Fast communication and inventory transparency are vital to prevent hoarding.
Headline: Integrated Pedestrian and Cycle Corridors. Core news: the Delhi LG cleared the redevelopment of 5 corridors to improve walking, cycling, and street safety. For the analysis, first, non-motorized transport effectively reduces emissions and last-mile barriers. Second, road widening simply induces traffic and is not synonymous with sustainable mobility improvement.
Headline: Prosecution immunity for forest guards. Core news: measures are currently being discussed regarding protection for field staff combating illegal sand mining. The analytical points. First, the proposed immunity is strictly for bona fide official actions in the field, and importantly, it absolutely does not equate to blanket impunity for abuse of power.
Headline: Wetlands Definition Challenge. Core news: environmental accountability is being tested over the definitions and exclusions within the Wetlands Rules of 2017. The analysis: first, wetlands provide critical flood control, groundwater recharge, and carbon storage. Second, artificial or historically developed wetlands still perform these ecological functions regardless of their legal classification.
Section 4. Science and Evolution. Headline: Science, Dog Brain Evolution, and Climate Change. Core news: small scientific findings are connecting to massive concepts like domestication, altering morphology, and melting ice, shifting Earth's mass. The analysis here: 1. Domestication reduces survival pressures, physically changing a species' behavior over generations. 2. Climate change, altering day length, is minute in human terms, but it's scientifically measurable.
Section 5. Mains Practice and Conclusion.
Question 1. Why are critical minerals becoming a core element of economic security and foreign policy? Examine India's policy options. Here is your exact answer structure. Introduction. Focus on strategic infrastructure. Body paragraph. Examine the energy transition and China's market concentration. Balance it by discussing current processing capacity. For the way forward, emphasize trusted partnerships and material recycling.
Question 2. How can escalation across Iran, Lebanon, and Gaza affect India's energy security, diaspora safety, and diplomatic choices? Analyze. Break it down like this. Introduction. Lay out the spillover risks. Body paragraph. Focus on import dependence and resulting inflation. Balance. Evaluate the safety of shipping lanes. Way forward. Map out diversified energy sourcing and solid evacuation planning. Resilience in an age of shocks requires unyielding constitutional morality, systemic readiness, and the continuous pursuit of knowledge.
Let's dive straight into today's 15-point rapid-fire revision blitz, kicking things off with governance and institutions.
Section 1, Governance and Institutions. Let's get into it.
Headline: UPSC Provisional Answer Key. The news: UPSC just released the Provisional Answer Key for CSE Prelims 2026, opening a representation window via the QP Rep portal. For your analysis, grab these 2 points. First, provisional answer keys directly improve transparency, and second, public institutions gain much-needed legitimacy when their grievance redress procedures are predictable and auditable. Looking at the mains enrichment grid for partial digitization. The core news here is that digital public services only reduce rent-seeking when they are actually reliable. 2 takeaways for your analysis. Number 1, the major hurdles are implementation capacity and coordination. Number 2, the way forward demands transparent rules, stakeholder consultation, and solid grievance redress so we don't accidentally create analog-era exclusion.
Moving rapidly right into our next section, polity and law.
Headline: Supreme Court upholds SIPR. In the news, the Supreme Court has upheld the special intensive revision of electoral rolls, affirming the Election Commission's duty to verify citizenship. Let's look at the analysis. First off, free and fair elections strictly require inclusive electoral rolls, and crucially, wrongly deleted voters must be guaranteed a restorative challenge process before any voting begins.
Headline: Assam UCC bill passed. The news is that Assam has passed a uniform civil code bill focusing on equality, pluralism, and personal law reform. Breaking this down for analysis. 1. Remember that Article 44 is a directive principle, meaning it's not automatically self-executing. 2. Any codified law must still strictly pass fundamental rights tests. Mere codification doesn't automatically mean reform.
Headline: ED Search Row. The news here? Enforcement Directorate searches at the Kerala opposition leader's residence triggered protests over alleged misuse, while the ED cited frozen accounts and records. Analytically speaking, note these 2 points. First, investigative agencies must rigorously balance operational independence with strict procedural fairness. Second, the rule of law mandates that investigations remain purely evidence-based, not politically selective. Headline: Anti-defection editorial. The core news is that a recent editorial criticized a political party for accepting resigned MLAs, comparing the tactic straight to Operation Lotus politics. For your analysis: 1. This perfectly highlights the ongoing challenges surrounding constitutional morality and speaker neutrality. 2. A major suggested reform is a statutory cooling-off period to prevent immediate by-election contests and deter mandate manipulation. Checking out the mains enrichment grid for the NCWS on Muslim personal law. The news revolves around the push for codification and gender justice. 2 analytical points to take away. First, plural traditions and drafting complexities pose a massive challenge to implementation. Second, the way forward absolutely has to involve codifying rights-based minimum standards with robust judicial safeguards. Shifting our focus now to Section 3, Social Justice. Here is the mains enrichment grid for behavioral appeals. The news analyzes appeals urging citizens to conserve energy amid global uncertainty. Your 2 analysis takeaways. First, relying purely on behavioral appeals during crises causes governance stress and public trust issues. Second, the forward path requires transparent rules and state capacity, rather than just leaning on individual citizen sacrifice. Headline: Sarthak PDS. The news? The Union Cabinet just approved the continuation of Sarthak PDS for 5 years, with a massive 25,530 crore financial outlay. For your analysis: Point 1. Public distribution system effectiveness relies heavily on storage and last-mile delivery, not just the raw allocation of grain. Point 2. Logistics costs ultimately dictate the timely availability of subsidized food grains for those who need it most. Headline: National Health Accounts. In the news, recent health data highlights falling out-of-pocket expenditure alongside shifting trends in public health spending. 2 points for your analysis. 1. Reduced out-of-pocket expenditure directly supports our most vulnerable groups, acting as a crucial economic buffer. 2. Sustained public funding remains absolutely critical for inclusive social justice and effective welfare delivery. Accelerating right along into Section 4, Economy and Trade. Looking at the mains enrichment grid for the India-US Interim Trade Pact. The core news is that a U.S. trade team is visiting India to finalize details of an interim trade agreement. Your 2 analysis points. First, the strategic impact of this pact includes vital supply chain risk mitigation. Second, to succeed, the way forward requires building economic resilience while maintaining principled strategic autonomy in a complex global order. Next up, the mains enrichment grid for aviation cuts and ATF costs. The news is that airlines are withdrawing roughly 250 daily domestic flights, citing soaring aviation turbine fuel costs. For the analysis: Point 1. The impact here is severe imported inflation and household cost escalation. Point 2. The structural solution lies in expanding strategic petroleum reserves and aggressively diversifying our suppliers. And into our final thematic block: Environment and Health. Headline: Yamuna Action Plan. The core news? The Supreme Court set up a Home Secretary-led committee to prepare a comprehensive plan, noting the Yamuna now essentially resembles a sewage canal. For your analysis: first, true river rejuvenation strictly requires basin-level planning and ecological flows. Second, multiple overlapping agencies currently create severe accountability gaps that must be closed. Headline: Buni Bugyo, Ebola, and NTDs. The news is that current outbreaks highlight ongoing deficiencies in vaccine preparedness and systemic pharmaceutical market failures. 2 analytical takeaways for you. 1. Neglected tropical diseases demand aggressive, persistent disease surveillance. 2. Global health governance has to proactively step in where commercial markets fail to incentivize vaccine preparedness. Headline: Whole body scans. The news? A growing commercial trend in whole body scans is raising severe medical concerns about overdiagnosis. For your analysis: first, unnecessary diagnostic findings can cause psychological and physical harm without actually improving patient outcomes. Second, simply put, more detection does not automatically equate to better evidence-based medicine. Halting the news blitz right here, let's lock in this data with 2 structured mains application questions.
Let's look at Mains question 5. Why is the ED search row relevant for polity and economy, and what are the governance challenges and reform options? To build this answer, you'll want to move from the current policy gaps and trust issues in your body paragraphs to a balanced way forward, emphasizing clear responsibility. Conclude with the absolute need for independent review and accountable implementation.
Now for Mains. Question 13. Why are aviation cuts and ATF costs relevant for economy and GS3? Anchor your body paragraphs heavily on import dependence and fiscal stress. Then, as you move to the way forward, conclude with actionable structural reforms, like expanding strategic petroleum reserves and supplier diversification to build systemic resilience.
Let's wrap up this explainer. Ponder this final thought from today's analysis as you synthesize these exact data points into your broader syllabus framework. Citizen responsibility matters, but systemic crises cannot be solved only through individual sacrifice. Keep that in mind and keep up the great work with your revisions.
If you're ready to really practice all 8 Mains questions from today's news, and you want to get your hands on Prelims MCQs and detailed notes, go ahead and download the complete PDF. Just scan the QR code on your screen or use the link in the description to join our Telegram channel. Keep up the amazing work, stay consistent, and I will see you in the next explainer.